Thank you, Paperlike, for sponsoring this video. Hey guys, what's up? So a little over a month ago, Apple dropped their new M3 iPad Air. I decided not to do a first impressions video on it because Apple dropped the regular iPad and the M4 iPad Air at the same time. So I decided to focus on those instead. Besides, how many unboxings do we really need to see, right? But I've been using this iPad almost every day since it got here, which is funny because I also have the M4 iPad Pro here as well, which is objectively the better iPad, but it's pretty much been sitting in my drawer this whole time because I'm reviewing this one, but also in the process, I haven't really felt the need to switch back to the Pro either. Even when I was packing up to go home, I didn't really want to bother, so I just packed this one instead. And that really made me think, if I replaced my M4 iPad Pro with this much cheaper M3 iPad Air, would I really miss it? Or in other words, is the M4 iPad Pro really worth all that extra money? Let's ramble.
Hold up, place go wild when I pull up. They all on me like it once.
Alright guys, I'm gonna try something a little bit different this time. I'm gonna switch it around and give you the cliff notes up front because even though the objective differences between these two iPads are quite clear, I think choosing the right iPad is about more than just the specs. It's about what you want from the iPad, what makes you happy versus how much you're willing to spend on it. The M4 iPad Pro is the better iPad, that's just a fact. It has a better chip, it has a much better display, it has a more advanced camera system, it has a Thunderbolt 4 port, not to mention double the RAM on the higher storage models, more cores in both CPU and GPU, as well as the option to get the nano texture display. But the M4 iPad Pro also has a much higher starting price for the base model at $999, all the way up to an eye-watering $2,299 for the fully decked out version, and that is for the 11-inch model, because if you want the 13-inch model all the way spec'd out, that will cost you an additional $300 at $2,599. The highest price you can pay for the 11-inch M3 iPad Air is $1,249, or $1,449 for the 13-inch model. I mean, that's a $1,000 difference, and that is serious money. So let's break this down a bit before we get into why I personally didn't really feel the difference between these two tablets while I was reviewing the Air, and why I believe most of you guys probably wouldn't either. So let's start with the design. The thing you'll notice straight away is that the bezels on the Air are noticeably thicker. What's also thicker is the actual body of the iPad Air, which is kind of ironic since you'd expect an Air model to be thinner than a Pro model, but that's not the case here. The position of the buttons is the same on both iPads, although the power button on the iPad Air has Touch ID built in, whereas the iPad Pro has Face ID, so no fingerprint scanner in the power button. Both tablets have 4 speaker grills, but you'll notice that only 2 of those 4 grills are actually populated with speakers on the iPad Air, which does of course result in a much fuller and richer sound on the iPad Pro. The iPad Pro has more microphones as well, 4 studio quality mics as opposed to 2 regular mics on the iPad Air. So for things like video calls or recordings, the Pro will definitely outshine the Air. The camera bump on the Pro also looks quite different. Both have a 12 megapixel wide camera, but the Pro model has the adaptive True Tone flash, which helps you with photos but also produces better scans. And of course the Pro has a LiDAR scanner, so if you use your iPad for any type of AR stuff, you will need that Pro. The iPad Air will not be able to help you there. Both have a USB-C port, but the port on the Pro is actually a Thunderbolt 4 port, which will give you significantly faster transfer speeds, and you will be able to hook up a wider range of accessories. Now, the biggest and most noticeable difference, and the thing that really sets the iPad Pro apart, no matter what type of user you are, is the display. It is undeniably one of the best displays I've ever used, full stop, not just on an iPad, but in general. Don't get me wrong, the Liquid Retina display on the M3 iPad Air looks great, but the Ultra Retina XDR display on the iPad Pro is just next level with that tandem OLED screen, producing those inky blacks, super vibrant colors, and of course Pro Motion up to 120 Hz. And lastly, there's an option to get a nano texture display on the higher storage version of the iPad Pro, and that's an option the M3 iPad Air does not offer. But if you want a nano texture type of experience on the M3 iPad Air, just get a paper-like screen protector. In fact, I didn't get the nano texture display on the Pro model because I actually prefer a paper-like for several reasons. One is that I really like the haptic feedback it provides, giving you that feeling like you're writing on actual paper using a microbead technology they call nano dots, which the nano texture display on the iPad doesn't do. Secondly, it reduces glare and fingerprints just as good as the nano texture display does. And lastly, I cannot help but think I'm gonna end up with marks on the nano texture display, and once that happens, you're screwed. There's nothing you can do about it. Now, a paper-like screen protector stays fresh for a long time, but even when it does ultimately start showing marks, I can just tear it off and apply a fresh one. 45 bucks will buy you a pack of 2 paper-like screen protectors, so that'll last you for a long time, and it keeps the actual screen protected. For me, that's a total no-brainer, and if you want to try it out for yourself, there will be links in the description below the video. Anyway, we've established that the iPad Pro definitely has some premium features the M3 iPad Air doesn't have. But in terms of actual everyday performance, the noticeable differences are not so straightforward. So let's start with the RAM. The M3 iPad Air has 8 GB of RAM, no matter what configuration you choose. The M4 Pro comes with twice as much RAM, as long as you choose the 1 TB or 2 TB storage option. Now, personally, I've never felt any slowdowns on the M3 iPad Air, and I doubt that it ever really uses the full 8 GB in my personal use case, and that does include a bit of editing, some gaming, lots of browsing on Chrome, and consuming a bunch of content. And that brings me to the chip. The iPad Pro comes with a better and more efficient M4 chip, whereas the iPad Air has the M3 chip on board. The thing is, both these chips are freaking amazing, and I can't say whether there's a difference between these chips because, again, the M3 iPad Air performed all the tasks I throw at it with ease. Zero lags, no stutter, no overheating, nothing. Now, theoretically, the M4 chip, especially in combination with the extra cores on the Pro model, should be noticeable for certain specific users and applications, such as 3D modeling or certain AR applications. If you're one of those users, you already know what you need, and you're gonna base your purchasing decisions on that. But for me personally, the way I use my iPad, and dare I say, the way most people will use their iPad, the chip upgrade from M3 to M4 really doesn't make that much of a difference. Now, before the M3 iPad Air dropped, the Magic Keyboard could be a deciding factor in your purchasing decision, but the new Magic Keyboard that dropped alongside the M3 iPad Air is pretty much identical to the Pro model. It's got the bigger trackpad, it has the extra row of function keys. The only real difference is that the Pro model has a bit more premium materials. So the chassis here is basically made of aluminum, and this one is still this rubbery plastic kind of stuff, but everything else is basically the same. Oh, and there's one little difference that I've noticed is that the Pro leans back a little bit further. The Air has a limit right here and the Pro goes back noticeably further. I don't really know if that makes a huge difference. I didn't really notice it, but yeah, it's good to know. And both models take the same Apple Pencils. You can either get the cheaper USB-C Apple Pencil or the more expensive Apple Pencil Pro if you care about the additional functionality like the squeeze feature, the hover function, or the barrel roll. So that's pretty much the same as well. So guys, for my personal use case, the only relevant difference is the display on the iPad Pro. And switching from the M4 Pro to the iPad Air, you'll definitely notice the downgrade in display quality and snappiness. But after a few minutes of using the Air, I've already forgotten about that, and it really makes me question whether for a non-Pro user like myself, it's worth spending all that extra money on the M4 iPad Pro. And my answer is no, it really isn't. So if I had to give some buying advice, I would say this. If you're a Pro user who needs some specific features the Pro has to offer, like the LiDAR scanner or the additional computing power, you already know who you are and the Pro model is made for you. And if you're one of those techies that just wants the latest and greatest and you have the money to burn, the M4 iPad Pro is the best in the game. But for everyone else who just wants a really good iPad for the best possible price, get the iPad Air. I promise you, you'll be perfectly happy. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a like. And if you didn't, just hit dislike twice. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next one.